Well, hello, friends, neighbors. John Houston here. Welcome to the Nook. Middle of the week. I'm on holidays, and so I thought, you know what? I can share another dram with you guys out there. And I've been wanting to shoot this actually for a long time, been holding on to this little bit. And what I want to talk about is, these are all port finished scotches. Yep, this is a blend. I'll tell you more about that. And then we've got some single malts, Arran and Glenallachie, and they represent, I think, a pretty good idea of what you get when you start it. This is all Canadian, 30 bucks Canadian, $75 Canadian, $120 Canadian. Obviously there's differences. There are different styles, there are different houses, so there'll be taste differences. But I'm going to try to comment a little bit about quality, a little bit about what are you getting when you go from 30 bucks all the way to almost $130? That's a big jump. So if you've got any port finished scotch, why don't you pour it around? Even better if you have a little bit of Dewar's or Arran or Glenallachie, pour that. Come on back and see if we can share any of the same ideas. 3, 4. Thanks for coming back. As I said in the opener, this is a tasting through very different costing levels of scotch and very different scotches. I'm going to start with Dewar's. This is Portuguese Smooth, part of their Smooth series. This one is 40%, and it's a blended scotch, which means there's all kinds of different houses in here, different single malts, but they also have grain in here. So there's more than just barley. Percentages, I have no idea. Then they've aged at about 8 years in, ex-bourbon and other casks. And then they've finished it in export casks. So I don't know how long. I should have looked that up. I thought I saw it once, but then I've forgotten. But this is wildly affordable in my market. We're talking $30 to $35 Canadian regularly on the shelf. So what does this blended port finished scotch nose and taste like? I would hope you would think scotch. It's got a little bit of maltiness and some sweetness. The sweetness right now is really vanilla, bright fruits, a little bit of berries, but also I think they put it on here, so now it's in my head. I'm going to say honeydew melon. It's not melony, but it's got that sweet, bright fruit note. Let's try it on the palate. Sláinte. I kind of like the way Dewar's puts their blend together. There's definitely some grain in there. There's definitely some slight mechanical sweetness, something industrial that I get in younger, and maybe not the best blends in the world, but it's tasty. It's a little sticky sweet for me. It's a little beyond honey. It's got some candy floss sugars in there. Again, I'm going to go with berries, almost strawberries. So there's some bright fruit. Usually in port. I'm hoping I'm going to get it out of these two. I also get, some chocolates and a little bit of espressos, as well as quite a sweet red fruit. Here I'm just getting the sweet red fruit. So it's candied, it's sweet. As I said, candy floss, sugar floss, strawberries, maybe even those artificial marshmallow strawberries, because it's really, really sweet. But it's not terribly offensive. I know I knocked it at first with the industrial notes and whatnot, but I think it's quite approachable. And if you're just getting into scotches and you want to get a sense of what different cask finishes go for, this is not a bad option. I usually recommend a single malt group, and now I'm Glen Murray. Wow, Glen Murray. Sorry. And they are going to be more than this, but they have a really nice, affordable, port or sherry or Cabernet Sauvignon or any of those things finishes, and gives you a good idea. Having said that, this is a nice blend. It's very sweet, very little finish to speak of, not terribly offensive, not amazing. So when we come over to Arran, my expectations go up. This is now, a single malt. This is a previous bottling. If you go into a store right now, you're not going to see this exact label, but this and the one coming up were given to me from friend of the channel, James, who found me and gifted me a number of whiskeys to share. James, you're amazing. This Arran, if you go on their website, they say it's aged about 8 years in ex-bourbon, and then it's finished for an undisclosed amount of time in port. What's nice about export cast, so what's nice about this is we've now gone into natural color, non-chill filter. So, when I look at this whiskey and it is a little bit darker than this tells me something when it's casking and it's aging, where of course this is the color they picked. I'm quite sure it's colored. We've gone quite a bit up in ABV. We've gone from 40 to 50% ABV. So it should have a little bit more punch. It certainly has more age and it has no grain. Let's get into this Aaron, port cask finished. Richer nose. When I say richer here, it's a little thicker. The fruit's less bright candy and more, cherry, even cooked down berry compote. Still sweet. What would that sweetness be? Well, there's a little bit of vanilla, so a bit of floral, not a lot, but a sweetness, maybe even almost a toffee. Already in the nose, there's some spicing, like Christmas cake spicing. Coming back here, it's a fine nose, but sweet berries. This just has another layer. Oh, and a little bit of citrus in there. Yep, I would say just a little bit of fresh lemon, but almost just zest, like it's been squirted over it. All right, let's give it a go. Slaja. I really can say this coats the mouth better. It's almost chewy. It's so tasty. I've got a mix of actually even a little bit of light ginger there, but some graham cracker, some maltiness, creaminess almost. Oh, and some really nice red fruit, red cherry, dark. A darker cherry in comparison to this artificial strawberry. And it's got more oaking coming through the finish, which can also be part of ABV. I find ABV really carries through oak for me or my palate. Like when I've got higher ABV, I often get a little more, and there is spicing on this. Now there's a bit of cracked pepper kind of on the edges of my tongue. Better have another little sip. Just really, really good. Keep in mind my thoughts now are in live and in direct comparison. But right now, richer, more coating, also spicier, a little darker, more oak on the finish, more little bit of chocolate. Now I mentioned that at first. I was expecting more chocolate here. Not a lot. There's a little bit of chocolate on here, a little cocoa powder, but it's not overwhelming. But in this sitting, it's just. I know we've doubled the price, almost 75, 30, 35. Yep, okay, we've doubled the price. But it is lots and lots more flavor. Certainly, if you're further along in your Scotch journey, you got to look at something like this, Aaron. Okay, the last one in this port walkthrough is Glenallachie Ruby Port Finish 12-year-old. This was also gifted to me from James. Again, such an awesome person. Found me, gave me whiskey. This is also natural, non-chill filtered. I think this one's aged 10 years in ex-bourbon and then a full 2 years in export. It's 48% ABV. So I usually end with the highest ABV, but with this kind of shot, it made sense to go, start at 30, 35 Canadian and end up at, 125. So it's also natural. So I should have had something white, but this is a little darker than the Aaron, so maybe a little more cask influence. I think it's spent more time in export. Let's see where the Glenallachie goes, nose and palate. Now, I expected this to be darker and more birding, but it is quite sweet. Yeah, this one coming back to has got a little bit more cocoa. And this one has more full and ripe fruit. Let's get into the palate and see how that goes. Sanja. It's only 2% ABV lower, but it is creamier, thicker, a little more chewy. The fruit expression is longer. I've got a little more like all the way from the pithy kind of fig date, where you got that's a little too sticky, but you've got those kind of flavors, and then it sweetens right out into a berry, again, sweet like this, but not artificial like this. It's got quite a bit more spicing going on. Better try another sip. Really good. As I said, of the three up here, it's got the strongest mouthfeel, most coating, and broader spice palette, but it's not as spicy as the Arid in terms of little cracked pepper, little more, cinnamon's the wrong word, but when something's a little more perky on the palate. More I talk though, there's a little bit of that coming around, so maybe it's farther down the finish. Heading into this tasting, I was going to mention, because I've had all of these before, that this had the most chocolate on it. Could be today, because these are today's thoughts. Right now, it's there. There's definitely a dark chocolate on this one. But coming back, I was getting a little more in the Arid, which I wasn't, and it's not in my notes as a standout note. It's as a tertiary, not even a secondary note. Interesting. I'm going to sip a couple of seconds between these two, because I'm now very curious in the head-to-head what my final thoughts are going to be. I needed to go back and forth between these two to get a better character sense or a better direct comparison sense. They are closer than I expected. My notes put the Glenallachie, and I actually think I will still say it's my favorite of these three, but by a hair. It's probably the mouthfeel. Oh, well, probably. In this moment, it is the mouthfeel and the finish that makes me go, yeah, okay, this is where I would go. What's interesting to me is, while this is an incredible value, $30 to $35 Canadian, it really doesn't give you the character that you're going to get from a nice single malt that spent some time in oak and a longer time in finishing. I will say either of these would do that for me. And it's tough for me to go, I just looked online at like 75 Canadian, not on sale, and I'm a bargain hunter, to 120 Canadian, 130. I've seen it like jumping around. That's a big jump. I like this one the most right now. This Glenallachie right now is my favorite of these three. But I think if I were buying for myself or even to share with a friend, I probably would go here. And the reason for that is I'm not always chasing value, but this is a good Scotch. They go to their website, they'll tell you that it's spent 8 years and then 2 years in port. Basically, it's a 10-year without an age stamp. It's natural color, non-chill filtered, and it's from a place that's putting out some good Scotch. So I think this is a good whiskey to go for. This has just a little more, and for me, it's mostly in that finish, the fruits that came back, the kind of Christmas cake. Now I got a little nut, I got a little Christmas spicing, and the mouthfeel made the Glenallachie just a hair better. But $50 is $50 these days, and this Aaron's a good Scotch. Thanks for joining me here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your walkthrough of maybe some ports that you've had. Do you actually really like the Dewars? Do you can't stand Aaron? Give me a thought. I really want the conversation. Thanks for joining me. Hope you guys are having a good week.